Now, we follow a mechanical way to define it, which is to look at faults that exceed 2 standard deviations. In a more sophisticated analysis, one would like to take into account, for example, the collapse in exports and take that as a control variable and see if the collapse in credit exceeds what would be explained by the collapse in exports, and so on and so forth. So I agree that there is some fine-tuning that one has to do here. However, what's interesting and what makes you think that there is a systemic element in the financial sector is that I showed one of the figures is the share of countries that were hit by this, and they increased dramatically. So it looks like a global phenomenon, and it increased dramatically around Lehman. So the sudden stop that I identify for emerging countries does not happen when they were hit by lower exports. They happen around Lehman. So in any case, this is an open issue that we should continue discussing. But that's what makes me think that I'm looking at the supply shock around Lehman. And that this comes in addition to the one that you pointed out. In terms of poorest countries, certainly there's very little they can do. They are affected by this, and we should be thinking of mechanisms to compensate the countries for these losses. There's little the country itself can do. Protectionism would be an error because you want to export, not so much to consume your stuff at home. So unfortunately, that's all I can say about it. Now, Marimon raised fundamental questions, and what else would I expect from him? Which don't have an easy solution. And but no, at this level, the only point that I want to stress is that it's very unlikely that going forward you'll be able to not rely on some kind of lender of last resort. It's a very weak statement, if you wish. How to make it credible, that's fundamental. I mean, that's an issue. The credibility, I don't know if you agree with me, but after thinking about these issues for many years, it's something that is attained on a political basis. You have to have some consensus. We don't have that at this point. The G20, I guess you or, well, you have also stressed, have done the work, and the question is, do we really need it? We've been able to grow without, we've been able to grow, that's true, but we have created also, for example, the bond market expanded in emerging markets in the 90s, and then it collapsed after the Russian episode. And as a result, this is my reading of the situation, what the emerging market, particularly in Asia have done is to accumulate international reserves. So there is no lender of last resort, but domestically they are trying to replicate the lender of last resort, which is costly for individual countries. It's costly, and it generates this externality if you don't like global imbalances, which are maybe even generating a bubble in the United States. That's quite possible. So yes, we have managed. The question is whether that's good enough. And this is an issue that I believe, for example, the G20 in the next meetings is at the center. What to advise emerging markets do about international reserves. I don't think we have a very good question, but I think it's a question that is related to the lack of lender of last resort. Otherwise, you don't need reserves. If you have, especially if you have floating exchange rate, but you would need reserves if you had a lender of last resort, with all the problems that carries, moral hazard, etc., etc. No? So, so that would be my answer. And again, the origin, you said that there was not enough discussion about the origin of the problem. Well, that's an issue there. The bank run approach helps me understand why these things happen, but that's not a full explanation. Because I'm thinking of a model with multiple equilibria, and I'm not telling you why I go from equilibrium A to equilibrium B. And we don't have a good theory for that. We have a sense that that might happen. We don't have a good theory. So you're absolutely right that I did not explain the origins of that. The origins you can trace, you know the story, you know the sequence of events, but we couldn't forecast that exactly because we didn't have a good theory. I think we have to work more on that. I'm saying it's not a very satisfactory conclusion to say it's like a bank run. Because the only thing I can say is try to avoid the bank run by regulating so that you don't generate the fragilities. But I don't know how to prevent the economy from going from the good equilibrium to the bad equilibrium. Maybe having a lender of last resort will help cushion that. But I wish I had an answer on how to prevent it altogether. I don't. And I think that's in the nature of bank runs. You know that they will occur, you don't know when, and you don't know the circumstances. We don't have a theory. I don't.
So thank you, Guillermo. Thank you to you all. We thank Guillermo for his splendid dissertation. Thank you, Guillermo. Ya, si no hubiese